Notice the use names list. Let me check it and write the story. The band names are Claire, Mark, Vanessa, Daniel, Theo, Phyllis, Howard, Marisol, Kate, Ryan, Nora, Adrian, Brooke, Greg, Jess, Patrice, Anna, Scott, Helen, Walt, Megan, Lily, Connor, Sienna, Scott, Helen, Walt, Megan, Lily, Connor, Sienna, Trevor, Dawn, Patricia, Maya, Joel, Olivia, Isabel, Caleb, Becca, Brandon, Tyler, Stephanie, Rachel, Adrian, Gerald, James, Leah, Donald, Patty, Rita, Hunter, Sloan, Tessa, Hazel, Warren, Nina, Petra, Audrey, Fiona, Preston, Cole. All use Lena, protagonist, Derek, husband, Vivian, best friend, the other woman, Marcus, Vivian's husband, the BIL equivalent, Sandra, mother-in-law. I went numb the moment I read it. Not the kind of numb where you can't feel anything. The kind where you feel everything at once and your brain just shuts the door on all of it, because if it didn't, you'd collapse right there in the parking garage of your own office building. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I had a department budget meeting that morning, and I'd been rushing, which is why I almost missed it entirely. The text wasn't even meant for me. Derek had sent it to my number by mistake. He must have realized it the second he hit send, because 3 seconds later my phone buzzed again. Ignore that, wrong thread, lol. And then, almost immediately after, hey, leaving work early today, don't make dinner. I stood next to my car with my keys in my hand and read the first message 4 times. Can't stop thinking about last night. Come back soon. He sent it to me. His wife. Because my number and hers are 1 digit apart in his contacts, and he'd been texting her so often that his thumb just knew the motion. I didn't call him. I didn't call anyone. I got in my car, sat in the dark of the parking garage for maybe 10 minutes, and then I drove home. Here's what people don't understand about a moment like that. You don't immediately become a different person. You don't suddenly know what to do. You sit in your car and you think about completely irrelevant things. Whether you turned off the coffee maker, whether you need to reschedule a dentist appointment, because your mind is looking for anything solid to hold on to. The thing you just learned is too large, it doesn't fit yet, so you just drive. Vivian had been my best friend for 11 years. We met her sophomore year of college, standing in line at the financial aid office. She'd locked herself out of her student account, and I lent her my laptop so she could reset her password. After that, we were just inseparable. The kind of friendship where you don't need to explain yourself. She was my maid of honor. I was in the room when she had her first panic attack after her dad got sick. I knew what she ordered at every restaurant we ever went to together. And Derek, we'd been married for 4 years, together for 7. I thought I knew the shape of our life. I pulled into the driveway. His car was already there, which surprised me because he'd texted me maybe 40 minutes earlier. I sat outside for a moment. The house looked completely ordinary. The porch light was on. The neighbor's sprinklers were going. Everything was exactly the same as it always was, except that I was a different person than the one who'd left for work that morning. I went inside. Derek was in the kitchen. He was making coffee, which struck me as an odd thing to do at 4:30 in the afternoon. He turned around when he heard me come in, and his face did something complicated. A half second of something, guilt maybe, or calculation, before it settled into normal. Hey, he said. Thought you had a late meeting. Got out early, I said. I put my bag down on the counter. I poured myself a glass of water. I stood at the sink and drank it and looked out the window at the backyard and thought, say something. Ask him. Make it real. But I didn't. I said something about traffic on the highway. He said something back. We had the most ordinary conversation in the world, and then I said I was going upstairs to change, and I went upstairs, and I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. That's when I made a decision. I wasn't going to say anything. Not yet. Not until I knew exactly where I stood. I work in finance. I've spent 8 years as a budget analyst for a mid-size healthcare company, and what that job has taught me above everything else is this. Before you react, you need to know the full picture. Emotions are expensive. Acting before you have all the information is the fastest way to end up in a worse position than you started. So instead of going back downstairs and throwing his coffee mug at the wall, I opened my laptop, the joint checking account first. I pulled up 6 months of statements and went through every transaction. It took about an hour. Most of it was normal: groceries, utilities, his gym membership, my student loan payment. But there were things I couldn't immediately place. A hotel charge 3 weeks ago, a Wednesday night, $187. A restaurant I'd never been to, another hotel, 2 months back. A florist charge on a date when I hadn't received any flowers. I took screenshots of everything. I sent them to my personal email and then to a folder in my Google Drive that I password protected right then and there. Then I called my sister. My sister is 4 years older than me, and she has the kind of personality that other people find overwhelming but that I have always found deeply reassuring. She doesn't panic. She doesn't catastrophize. When I told her, keeping my voice low because Derek was downstairs watching television, she was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Okay, here's what you're going to do." She walked me through it. Get copies of everything. Don't move money yet, just document it. Contact a divorce attorney before you confront him. Not after. Before. Look at the joint assets. Know your number. And Lena, she said, before she hung up. I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear, but you already know what you're dealing with, and the only question now is how you're going to handle it. She was right. I already knew. I think I'd known the second I read that text, and some part of me had been preparing the whole drive home. I spent the next 2 days doing research. I found an attorney through a referral from a coworker I trusted, a woman named, well, it doesn't matter. What matters is that I had a consultation on Thursday morning, an hour before work, and I sat in a small office downtown with a cup of bad coffee and learned exactly what my rights were. In our state, we'd been married long enough that the division of assets would be straightforward. The equity in the house, the retirement accounts, the car we bought together last year. My attorney explained everything calmly, and when she was done, she asked if I had questions, and the only question I could think to ask was, how long does this usually take? Depends on whether he contests anything, she said. If it's uncontested, you could be done in 6 months. 6 months. I thought about that on the drive to work. 6 months from now, I could be an entirely different version of myself. That Thursday evening, Vivian texted me, "Hey stranger, I feel like I haven't seen you in forever. Dinner Sunday?" I read it and put my phone face down on the kitchen counter. She and her husband Marcus had been having problems for a while. She'd told me that herself, over wine, about a year ago. She'd said they were thinking about couples counseling. She'd cried a little. I'd held her hand and told her that whatever she decided, I would support her. That was the kind of friend I was to her. I didn't respond to the text that night. I sat with the knowledge of what she'd done, and I tried to understand it, and I couldn't. 11 years. I had been there for every hard thing in her life. I had driven 2 hours to sit with her in a hospital waiting room when her father had surgery. I had listened to her cry about her marriage for months, and she had chosen him anyway. On Friday, I called the bank and opened the new individual checking account. I didn't move any money. I just opened it, set up direct deposit for my next paycheck, and put the account number in my phone. My attorney had been clear: don't touch the joint account, don't move joint funds, just make sure your next income lands somewhere only you control. That was the first step. That weekend, Derek was around the house, acting completely normal. We watched a movie on Saturday night. He made pancakes Sunday morning. He was attentive in the careful, slightly guilty way that I now recognized for what it was: the behavior of someone who was afraid they'd almost been caught and was trying to compensate. I watched him like I was watching a stranger. I thought I had been sleeping next to someone I don't actually know. Sunday afternoon, Vivian texted again. "Everything okay? You've been quiet." I typed and deleted 3 different responses. Finally, I wrote, "Busy week, sorry, talk soon." And then I put my phone away and finished what I was doing, which was going through the documents my attorney had asked me to gather. Mortgage statement. Both car titles. The brokerage account we'd opened 2 years ago. A list of any joint debts. It was methodical work, quiet work, the kind of thing that looks like nothing from the outside, but is, in fact, the most important thing you can be doing. I thought about saying something to Marcus. It sat with me for days. He was a decent person, quiet, steady, the kind of man who showed up early to things and remembered your coffee order. He deserved to know, but my attorney had advised me to say nothing to anyone except my sister until the paperwork was in motion, and I followed that advice even when it felt wrong, because I knew that making decisions based on what felt good in the moment was exactly how people ended up worse off. I filed the petition on a Thursday morning, 3 weeks after that text message in the parking garage. Derek was at work. I had the morning off. I told my manager I had a medical appointment, which felt close enough to the truth. I signed what needed to be signed. My attorney explained the service process and I listened carefully. And then I drove to a coffee shop I'd never been to before and sat by the window and had a cup of coffee by myself, and I thought, okay, it's in motion now. He was served the following Tuesday. I know, because I was in the kitchen when he came home that evening. He was holding the envelope and his face had gone gray in a way I'd never seen before. He set it on the counter and looked at me and said, "Lena, just my name, nothing else." "I know about Vivian," I said. He didn't deny it. That surprised me a little. He sat down at the kitchen table, the table we'd bought together at an estate sale 4 years ago, before we were even married, on a Saturday when we thought we were just browsing. And he put his head in his hands. "How long?" I asked. 7 months, he said. "Lena, I don't need you to explain it," I said. "I just needed to know." He looked up. "You already filed." "Yes, I didn't think." He stopped, started again. "I didn't think you'd do it this fast." "I know," I said. "That's kind of the point." He asked if there was anything he could do. He said he was sorry. He said it had been a mistake, that it hadn't meant anything, that he didn't want to lose me. He said all the things that people say when they've been caught and are suddenly faced with the consequences of choices they made when they thought there wouldn't be any. I'd had 3 weeks to rehearse this moment, and what I'd rehearsed was saying nothing. So I said, "I think you should stay somewhere else while we work through the logistics." And I went upstairs. He left that night. He took a bag and the charger off his nightstand and he left, and I heard the door close, and I sat on the bed in the silence of the house and thought about all the ways a life can change and still somehow look the same from the outside. His mother called me the next morning. I almost didn't answer, but I did, because I have always been the kind of person who picks up the phone. She told me she'd talked to Derek. She told me she was heartbroken. And then she said, "I just hope you'll both take time before making any permanent decisions. Marriages go through hard seasons." I was quiet for a moment. "He had a 7-month affair with my best friend," I said. "In our home. While I was at work." She made a sound. "I know that what he did was wrong. But Lena, he's devastated. He made a terrible mistake, and I know if you—" "I filed 3 days ago," I said. "The paperwork is already with the court." A long pause. "You didn't even try to talk to him first?" "I had 3 weeks to think about it," I said. "I talked to myself plenty." She started to say something else, and I said gently but clearly, "I appreciate that you called. I know this is painful for your family, but this is my decision, and it's made." And I ended the call. I will tell you something about that moment. It was the first time in 3 weeks that I felt anything close to relief. Not happiness, not triumph, just relief. Like I'd been holding my breath since the parking garage, and I finally let it out. I texted Vivian the next day. Not to yell, not to get into it, just 3 sentences I know. "Derek told me, I think it's better if we don't talk for a while." She called twice. I didn't answer. She left one voicemail that I listened to once and deleted. She sounded like she was crying. She said she was sorry. She said she didn't know how to explain it. She said she hoped someday I would understand. I understood perfectly. That was the thing. I understood that she had made choices, many of them, over 7 months, and at no point during any of those choices had she thought about what it would do to me. Not because she was evil, but because people, when they want something badly enough, find very creative ways to not think about the people they're hurting. Marcus found out about a week later. I don't know exactly how Sir Robert Derek told him, or whether Vivian did, or whether he figured it out the same way I did. But I know because a mutual friend called me carefully and said that Marcus and Vivian were separating. She asked if I knew anything about it. I said I did. I didn't say more than that. The divorce moved quickly, as these things go, because Derek didn't fight anything. He got the car he drove, I got the equity in the house, we split the brokerage account down the middle. My attorney handled most of it. I signed documents in an office and then it was done. or as done as these things are at the beginning. I moved out of the house about 2 months later. I'd thought about staying. It was mine after all. I'd put the down payment on it with money I'd saved for 3 years before we were even together. But I'd been in it long enough to know that the walls held too many versions of a life I no longer lived, so I found an apartment. 3rd floor, plenty of natural light, close enough to work that I could walk on good days. I moved in on a Saturday in the early fall with my sister's help and a rental truck and about 4 hours of physically exhausting work that I was grateful for because it kept me from thinking too much. The first night in the new apartment, I ordered Thai food and sat on the floor because I didn't have furniture yet, and I ate pad see ew out of a container and watched something forgettable on my laptop and felt I want to be honest about this. I felt okay. Not great. Not healed. But okay in a way that I hadn't expected. Okay in the way that you feel when you've been through something hard and come out the other side with your sense of yourself still intact. There's a thing I've thought about a lot since then, and it's this. The people who hurt you don't usually know exactly what they're starting. Derek sent that text to the wrong number and didn't think I'd do anything except maybe cry and forgive him. Vivian probably thought that if it ever came out, she'd explain herself and I'd eventually come around. His mother thought a phone call would slow things down. None of them accounted for the version of me that's been quietly paying attention for years. The one who knows how to read a financial statement and has a sister who answers on the first ring and understands that some things, once done, cannot be undone by an apology. I don't hate them. I want to be clear about that. Hate takes energy I've decided to spend elsewhere. Derek and I were civil through the whole process, which I think surprised him, and I think it was harder for him than anger would have been. Vivian and I have not spoken since that voicemail. I don't know if we ever will. That door isn't closed exactly, but it's not open either. What I know is this. I came home from work one Tuesday in August and the life I thought I had was over. And instead of falling apart, I opened a spreadsheet. I made a plan. I moved one step at a time, in the right order, without letting anyone else's urgency become my emergency. And now it's spring. My apartment has good light in the mornings. I started running again, which I'd stopped when work got busy 2 years ago. I had dinner with my sister last weekend and we laughed for 3 hours straight about things that had nothing to do with any of this. I'm still the same person who stood in a parking garage and went numb. But I'm also the person who figured out what to do next. That's the part nobody warned me about. Not how much it would hurt. People warn you about that. But how much of yourself you find on the other side of it, when you stop trying to save something that was already gone and start building something that's actually yours. I've thought a lot about the moment I read that text. 2 seconds, maybe 3, standing next to my car in a parking garage with a bag on my shoulder and a coffee going cold in my hand. That's all it took for everything to shift. What I've learned, not from a book, not from anyone's advice, but from living it, is that the people who hurt you rarely expect you to be paying attention. Derek sent that message to the wrong number because he'd gotten comfortable. Comfortable people get careless, and careless people hand you exactly what you need if you're steady enough to pick it up instead of falling apart. I didn't fall apart. I want to say that clearly, not because I'm proud of it in some performative way, but because I think it matters to say out loud, I chose not to. Every day for those 3 weeks between reading that text and filing the paperwork, I made a decision. To stay calm, to gather information before reacting, to protect myself first because no one else was going to do it for me. That's the part about intelligence that nobody talks about honestly. It's not about being the smartest person in the room. It's about knowing when to be quiet, when to watch, when to move slowly and deliberately while everyone around you assumes you're doing nothing. Vivian assumed I had no idea. Derek assumed that even if I suspected something, I'd confront him first, give him a chance to talk his way out of it. The way people always assume you will. His mother assumed a phone call would slow things down. None of them understood that I had already made my decision before any of them knew there was a decision to make. That's what I mean by intelligence in the way that actually matters. It's not cleverness. It's the discipline to not let your pain move faster than your judgment. And then there's the other thing. The thing I keep coming back to when I think about Vivian. 11 years of friendship. 11 years of showing up, of being honest, of sitting with her in hospital waiting rooms and holding her hand through things that had nothing to do with me. That's not a small thing to lose. I want to be honest about that because I think people expect the story to end with righteous anger. And the truth is that grief is quieter and stranger than anger. I grieved her. I grieved the person I thought she was and the friendship I thought we had. But here's what I also know. The choices we make when we think no one is watching are the truest version of who we are. Vivian made hers. Derek made his. And I made mine, not in a parking garage on a Tuesday, but in every small moment afterward when I chose discipline over impulse, clarity over chaos, self-respect over the easier thing. What I have now? The apartment with good light, the running shoes by the door, the dinner with my sister where we laughed for 3 hours. I built that. Not from scratch, but from what was left after I stopped trying to hold on to something that had already ended. There's a kind of strength in that, not the loud kind, but the kind that compounds quietly over time, like interest in an account you almost forgot you had. I don't think I'm exceptional. I think I just refuse to make myself smaller to accommodate someone else's mess. That refusal is available to anyone. It doesn't require a particular temperament or a particular set of circumstances. It just requires that you trust yourself enough to act on what you already know, even when acting is the harder thing. That's the only lesson I have. It's not complicated. Trust what you see. Move carefully, build something that's actually yours.